Hello, good evening to all of you. I welcome you here. This is my last video on postmodernism, and here I am going to talk about the critiques of postmodernism exclusively, in which I'll be taking Benjamin and Habich and Terry Eagleton and Norris. And one thing I would like to tell you that the importance of a person or any idea or any movement can be judged on the basis of the enemies that it has created. Enemies in the sense they are not enemies direct like going to fight, but those people, those critics and authors and thinkers who are against not subscribing the view. Whenever there is any idea, any concept given by a school of people, there are writers and thinkers who oppose the idea or do not subscribe. There is only two ways, either to subscribe. For example, we are also a critic. So either we can subscribe the views which are there in postmodernism, or we can go against the views which are there in postmodernism. So here I am going to talk about exclusively about the powerful critiques which have been there and who have criticized the concept of postmodernism. What are their grounds that we must know so that we can develop our own idea? The most of the critics are against the hypocrisy that is there in postmodernism and the unstable nature that postmodernism is having, because they are trying to create a dichotomy, and that dichotomy is not very stable. And they are trying to say, the postmodernists are of the opinion that no truth, no authority and no value system must be respected. And all these critics, one thing that is there common in them is that they all subscribe this thing, that without any value system, without any authority, whether this authority is illusory as they say, illusory, or this authority is unreal, without any authority and value system and without believing in something, the society cannot be run. In order to run the society, in order to make the life go on, make the show go on, some sort of belief, some sort of faith is needed, whether that faith is right or illusory, or whether that faith is going to be relevant forever or not. So, all in all, as Benjamin says, that postmodernism is anti-enlightenment per se. Whatever ideas, whatever concepts are there to be found in enlightenment thesis, they are completely against that, like universalism, truth, validity, unity, and universality. So they are challenging all those concepts which are there to be found in enlightenment project, and that is why it is said that Habich is the first critique that I am going to talk about, and he says that it is said that his ideas regarding postmodernism is that of a viceroyal idea. Viceroyal idea means he is very authoritative in judging postmodernism, and he has written an essay, The Bottom Line on Planet One, where Habich saw the postmodern project as a deliberate nihilistic attempt to undermine the validity of the distinction between good and bad, legitimate and illegitimate, and style and substance. These are the things, good and bad. Unless there is any difference between good and bad, how we will work? Whether that distinction, whether that difference is absolute or not absolute, but there must be some sort of difference between these things, good and bad, legitimate and illegitimate, and style and substance, because literature or any writing is made of two things, the subject matter and the style. So postmodernists are of the opinion that there is hardly any difference between the style and substance, both are the same. because it is styleless, mind you. Postmodernism is styleless, dehistoricized, decathected world. So he is also of the opinion that they try to challenge the authority of any distinction which is not alert to its own partial and provisional status of its own impermanence. And then Habich says that if men are from planet X and women are from planet Y, then the postmodernists are from from the planet actually this is, if men are from planet Mars and women are from planet Venus, postmodernists are from planet X. And he talks about two kinds of earth. One is flat one is round one. The round earth that is there, according to Habich, that is still subscribing, that still holds the importance to truth, validity of truth is there, and value system is working. And those who believe in round earth, and some sort of morality, some sort of justice is there to be found. And those people who believe in flat earth, everything is leveled. And postmodernists are like that. Postmodernists basically believe in flat earth where everything is leveled. Everything is leveled, and the inhabitants exist in the sphere of the hyperreal, as Baudrillard said. The people are living in hyperreal world, divorced from the annoying contours and crevices of ethical, social, political and rational judgment. There is no rational judgment, they believe. Postmodernists subscribes this idea that this is a world which is a flat one where everything is leveled and nothing remains there, there is no judgment, there is no rationality, there is no moral, political and ethical things to be found on this flat earth. And to live on that flat earth, postmodern earth, Habich asserts, is to abandon oneself to an eclectic free for all, where the only opinion is public opinion. This is the Habich's viewpoint. This is the critique of postmodernism. He is of the opinion that postmodernists believe that there is no opinion important, only popular opinion is important, and the public opinion that is there, and all notions of right and wrong are dissipated. There is nothing right, there is nothing wrong. Those people who are most rich, they are the best, they are the most correct people. The might is right. That kind of thing is there. And politics, and he is of the opinion that under such condition, philosophy becomes a sound bite. Politics and exercise in media manipulation. If you can say, if you ask me what is the philosophy of postmodernism, we can say that it is the philosophy of postmodernism is, or the philosophy of flat earth. Those people who believe in flat earth, their philosophy is sound bite philosophy. And politics, what is politics for them? Politics for them is media management. And the only acceptable form of judgment is the result of the latest opinion poll. Latest opinion poll becomes the only form of judgment. This hyperreal world is a fluid, constantly changing mass of free floating signifiers without any fixed, reliable reference point. There is this world, postmodern world, according to Habich, postmodern world is free fluid, and it is having no reference point. Nothing can be referred to nothing. I have already talked about that. In the modern time, people do not relate themselves with anything. Rather, things are self-identical. What you are, I am what I am. I have no past, I have no point of reference. So point of reference is hardly to be found there. Truth is a chimera. Chimera, illusion. Truth is a kind of thing that is hard to get, impossible to have. And notions of good and evil are phantasms. Notions of good and evil are phantasms, illusion, complete illusion, where you are completely confused, and that is it is difficult to retain a faith in anything much at all when all absolutely everything moves with the market. Market is the highest thing, greatest thing. Everything, every concept, every idea is moving with the market. That is talking of marketism. That is why, because I have told you that postmodernism talks of capitalism. It is a triumph of capitalism. The culture of postmodernism is essentially the culture of capitalist culture, consumerist culture. Everything is having its cost. If you pay, you can have you can buy the love. If you pay, you can buy the faith also. So that this is a faulty and potentially dangerous perspective to have, given the politically unstable world of today. The world of today, the flat earth, is politically very unstable kind of a world. Habich contends increasingly obvious the only course of action for the rational and secular intellectual who wishes to avoid the flat earth philosophy of the postmodern Delex at their most extreme is to accept that, however illusory and unprovable, some form of authority acting on behalf of truth is socially necessary. So Habich is of the opinion that Deleck is a person, Deleck is a thinker who is of the opinion that however illusory the value system is there, however illusory the truth is there, but in order to run the society we need to have some sort of provision, some sort of truth that is socially accepted, and in the absence of it we cannot run it. As postmodernists are completely against these notions, so he is of the opinion that some sort of truth is needed to run the society. Once this initial leap of faith is made, Habich asserts we can continue to believe and remind ourselves that the earth is round, not flat. So the conclusion that Habich gives, he talks of two earth and he talks of the planet X and Y, and he talks of Venus and planet also, and then he says that two flat earth and round earth is there. So he is reminding us that still we are living on a earth that is round, not flat, means where everything is not leveled. Good and bad is having importance. It is not enough to say that there is hardly any distinction between good and bad and legitimate and illegitimate. That will not do. In practicality, you will need to identify what is good, what is right, what is wrong, what is correct, what is incorrect, and what we should do and what we should not do. On the basis of that only we can live. So he says that the flat earth, concept of flat earth that has emerged out of the philosophy of postmodernism cannot do the job, and somewhere we will have to have some sort of truth and value system that can run the society. And then we will be talking about Norris, Christopher Norris. He is one of the main exponents of the criticism of postmodernism and War Against Errorism. That is an essay written by him, War Against Errorism, in which he says that entire postmodern thinking, entire postmodern idea are heap of errors. Plenty of errors are there. Asserting that postmodernism makes the commonplace error of equating our present depressed condition of political life with the representative, with the limits of what is thinkable in terms of a better, more just, enlightened, or truly representative socio-political order. Actually, what is the fault of the postmodernists? They try to relate the present state of affairs, present depressed condition of humanity with the that is the last thing for them. They are of the opinion that there is no hope of improving it, and this critique, Norris is against this idea, and he is of the opinion that there are two things. One is present state of affairs, and another one is the representative state of affairs. We might be in a bad condition today, we might be having multiple problems today, but we think of, we represent the world not as it is, but what it ought to be. Like Aristotle has said that literature talks about what ought to be. So there is hardly any difference in postmodernism between the reality, present reality, and the representative reality. For them, both are the same, and that is their greatest mistake. And he is of the opinion that the present depressed, equating our present depressed condition of humanity with the representative socio-political situation is the greatest mistake of the postmodernist. Norris' work is centered around two projects. On the one hand, he attempts to show the intellectual bankruptcy of the postmodern and post-structuralist movement thinkers. Both these thinkers, post-structuralist and postmodernist, they are intellectually bankrupt, and to show the bankruptcy and by painstakingly highlighting and correcting the philosophical errors in their negative representation of Enlightenment thought. What is their fault is they have gone too far away in opposing the Enlightenment thesis, and they have blindly and they have without any logic, without any rationality, in a way they have tried to debunk the Enlightenment thought, and that is negative. They have misrepresented rather, negative representation of Enlightenment thought, and their reading of Kant. That is the two great mistakes that they have done. Kant, as you know, is the base of Enlightenment thesis. Then on the other hand, he seeks to rescue Derrida, and they have taken Derrida alongside them, and he is trying to rescue Derrida from there, and not only from the taint of postmodernism. He says that Derrida is a different kind of a thinker, and he should not be remaining there in the taint of postmodernism and post-structuralism, but also but he should be taken off from there, and he also is ready to counter the statement of Habermas, who has said that Derrida is a new neo-conservative, and this Derrida as it is impossible to do justice. He is of the opinion that if we put Derrida in the category of postmodern and post-structuralist thinkers only, it will be a kind of injustice. So he is trying to rescue Derrida from there, because Derrida is having greater potentiality to be categorized as post-structuralist, post-modernist thinker. Postmodernism, he asserts, is a willful rejection of the prevailing idea that critical intelligence and rational thought allow the serious thinker to separate truth from illusion. This is their mistake, and they are of the opinion that critical intelligence and rational thought allow the serious, according to the postmodernists, they are of the opinion that if there is any person who is having critical faculty, if he is having rationality, he is able to separate truth from illusion and reality from ideological misrecognition. What is representative reality? The postmodernists regard it, post-structuralists regard it, the misrecognition, ideological misrecognition. That is their mistake. The postmodern discourse is, according to Norris, a philosophically impoverished narrative. It is a philosophically, I have time and again repeated this thing, that they are philosophically weak. They have got no solid base of philosophy. So their main problem is philosophically impoverished narrative, a narrative which is devoid of the philosophical base, loss masquerading as plenitude, masquerading at plenitude, realism, truth, value, and positive political action are all discarded. They have discarded all the political action and realism and truth and value carelessly and willfully, and the end result of is similar to a starving man throwing the last tuna fish that is there in the house, expecting for a imaginary steaks to come. Like you are having 500 rupees at your home, and you are expecting that millions of rupees are going to come to you, and you throw out that 500 rupees in the expectation, and ultimately you get nothing. That imagination of getting crores of rupees is gone. So what will be your condition? That is the situation with the postmodernists. They whatever the remains of philosophical background was there, they left it in the hope of having some great philosophy, and ultimately they are not able to have any kind of philosophy, and the philosophy that was remaining, the thought idea that was remaining with them, that is also abjured. But the stakes in the postmodern game are, Norris insists, far from imaginary, and he tackles postmodernism's neutering of the radical impulse on various real political fronts, such as the Gulf War and British Labour Party's abandonment of socialist principles in favor of spin and Holocaust denial. For example, the way Baudrillard says that Gulf War never happened, and he tries to somewhere mean to say that same way the Holocaust never happened. But will anybody believe this? So everything is hyper real, things are misrepresented, identities, reality is not there to be found. By saying this, you cannot reject the historical facts which are there. So that is the point he is trying to make here. Norris is always painfully aware, however, that any evidence or critique he offers can and probably will be rejected on the grounds that he is still in the grip of outmoded Enlightenment theories and values. Norris says that if I come forward with a new idea, these postmodernist thinkers, they will reject it, saying that he is the man who is influenced, who is under the grip of Enlightenment thesis, Enlightenment movement, and those theories of Enlightenment movement are outmoded. On this basis, they will reject my point, my view that he knows. Within the relativist realm of postmodernism, particularly when dealing with Baudrillard's apocalyptic abandonment. As Baudelaire said that we are at the verge of apocalyptic state. The world is going to end very soon. Are the real or the democratically pluralistic relationism of Bauman, any proof produced can be dismissed on the grounds that we either no longer possess the ability to distinguish between the real and the simulated. So postmodernists are very conform. If you come forward with another thesis, they will say that there is hardly there is no way, there is no method by which we can distinguish between real and the simulated event. Real event and simulated event cannot be separated. But this is not the fact. If 12 laborers are killed by, they have met the accident on the railway, however logic we give, that reality will not be changed. But they are of that opinion, and they are of the opinion that any event can be denied to have existed by saying that this is misrepresentation or this is something that is simulated event, or we are not respecting the rules of this particular language game. And they will say that this person is not respecting the language game. When we must prove our proof, when nothing can be assumed or taken as said, then there is no common ground for reason to debate. Only slippery argumentation, seductive sound bites and glossy surfaces. They, on the name of argument, what they do? Seductive sound bites and slippery argument and glossy surfaces they produce, and it becomes increasingly difficult to build an argument. In this situation, it is very difficult to build any kind of argument. It is for this reason that Eagleton, like Norris, sees postmodernism as symptomatic of the problem rather than as part of the solution. Postmodernism is a school of thought, theory, that talks of the symptoms and the problems like a problem play, but doesn't give any solution. And unless any school of thought gives some solution, any idea, any thought give any solution to problem, it is not the school, it cannot be given the status of a school. So postmodernism is for Eagleton a state of post-radicalism, like Norris, who sees post-radicalism, postmodernism as a manifestation of intellectual cowardice. Norris is of the opinion that it is a intellectual cowardice. Eagleton subscribes that view. Eagleton suggests that the postmodern condition amounts to constant erosion of confidence and purpose, justified by the illusory rather than defeat of socialism. It is illusory rather than defeat of socialism. Throughout his critique, the illusions of postmodernism are the realities of socialism. The illusions of postmodernism or the realities of socialism, since this effectively is the choice he asks his readers to make. He is trying to make, Eagleton is trying to make a kind of question to you, and that question is the illusion of postmodernism or the realities of socialism. What is the illusion that is there to be found in postmodernism, and what is the reality? Eagleton, like Norris before him, devastatingly exploits the contradictions in the postmodern armor. Postmodernism, he argues, is guilty of hypocrisy. Lots of hypocrisy is to be found there for all its talk about difference, plurality, heterogeneity. Eagleton argues postmodern theory often operates with quite rigid binary systems with difference, plurality. They are very rigid about the difference, plurality and all, and allied terms lined up bravely on the one side, and theoretical fence and whatever their antithesis may be. And postmodernism, Eagleton reminds us, is equally guilty of category classification. This category classification cannot be made, and if someone is doing that, postmodernism is doing that, they are guilty of it. And postmodernism, Eagleton and he goes to the great lengths to show how elitism is not same as hierarchism. Objectification is not synonymous with alienation. There is a difference between objectification and alienation. There is a difference between hierarchism and elitism, and there is a difference between these things. Despite postmodern's phobia towards them, power and authority are necessary prerequisites for our existence as social beings, and not some terrifying enlightenment totalitarian bogeyman to be exorcised by sleight of hand pragmatism in the name of democratic ideal. So this is the statement of Eagleton that is important. And then there is another critique that is very important, that is Benjamin, who has said that postmodernism is anti-enlightenment per se, and he later on says that humankind as a race and the individual finds itself immersed in the ambiguous grey zone of judgment in which right and wrong, good and evil, civilization and barbarism cease to exist in tidy binary opposition. You can say that any civilization is not without barbarism. In every civilization, whatever grandeur it has got in that society, some sort of barbarism is existing. Like in our Mahabharata, we can say, in Ramayana, we can say, some sort of barbarism is to be found. So these are the views of the critics, and I hope the things are clear to you. If you want to have the examples, you can consult Patricia Waugh, and you will find 2-3 good examples there given by Patricia Waugh at the end. So I am ending my lecture here and the entire postmodern thesis, because this is very lengthy kind of a thing, and I have got tired of discussing this thing. So we are finishing it. Okay, bye. Take care. Good.